Alright, what's up guys? So for today's study session, what we're really doing here is no real topic, just going through hand histories. I know for most study sessions we usually pick a specific topic like ICM or bubble play, whatever it might be. Here we're just going to go through a bunch of hands, some of which were posted in the forum that I didn't get to yet. So I thought this would be a good time to um, to respond to those hands and go through them because there's some tricky hands. They relate to, those first couple hands that I'm going to go through relate to the concept of raise folding, raise calling, rather than the unexploitable shove. So I think that's something that's always good to go over. Um, so we'll get into those. Eduardo, I know you sent me two other hands. I'll get to those after these. And if we have time after, and if you guys have hands ready to go and you want to toss them in, you can toss them in. So let's just get started here. So I'll read. You guys can read the question here. Let me do one thing real quick. Don't mind my 1,000 icons on my desktop. Just so I can see your chat as well. I'll give you a chance, kind of read through. We're just going to take it hand by hand here. Again, this has to do with the concept of raising or shoving, which is part 4 of the boot camp series, playing exploitable, playing optimally. So why don't I pull up the hand and then I'll come back to this. So here's the hand that was posted. As it's loading, I'm not sure why it's taking so long here. I guess as it's loading, I'll just read it. So, in this situation, it's going to be a small blind versus big blind scenario versus a good reg. It's a 180-man game, so we're going to be dealing with chip EV. The question is, you struggle with these types of spots. Before you heard about the raise fold stuff, you just folded pre. I don't think he's going to exploit me here, but I think he is, or he can be on 30%. So although he is wide, is a raise fold better than just folding? Commonly raised 2.2 to 2.4x instead of a min raise because it looks stronger to regs. Not even that it looks stronger, by the way. I mean, I always recommend going a little bit bigger in the small blind. Not necessarily that it looks stronger. It just gives less room to 3-bet. It doesn't make it as easy for players to flat you. So that's why I tend to like it. And then the question is, how wide must he shove that my fold pre is better? All right, so let's take a look here. I'll just put it in the replayer. All right. So let's hit play. Okay, so as it's going through here, just to set up the scenario, chip EV, we're pre-ante, big blind 150. We have half decent stack here. The big blind, who we said is a reg, is sitting on about 11 big blinds. So let's see what happens. So you raise to 360, perfectly fine, and he 3-bet jams you. So now that we see the hand, the question is, how wide must he shove that just folding pre is better? So I mean, obviously you have 3 decisions. You could fold, you can shove, you can raise fold. Okay. So let's take a look at those scenarios. And what I did is I'm going to be using Cardrunners EV, for guys that have been part of these or seen the videos, how I like that program. But it's good for situations like this. And I'm going to use SITnGOWizard to look at the shoving part, and Cardrunners EV to look at the exploitable raise fold, raise call part. So why don't I think this was that hand? Yeah, Queen 4. Okay, I pulled it up. So we said that he's on about 30% calling range. So if he's a good reg and he assumes you're a reg, you can be shoving really wide. So if you shove really wide, he can call really wide. 30% is certainly feasible. I think it's really good to know whether a reg is on that type of range. Obviously, you're not going to know 100%, and he might call Queen 10 before he calls King 4. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Um, Shove is outside Nash. Yeah, I mean, you can see that if you put him on 30%, you're right at like a break-even shove. Okay? So you can definitely have the debate of should you shove, shouldn't you shove, if you think he's going to call really wide. If he's one of those regs that is capable of, like I said, calling pretty damn wide, which a good reg is capable of doing. I know it says 45 man. It doesn't really matter. We're in chip EV, so it doesn't really matter what else is going on at the table and um, what this is set up as. So the question is, should we fold, or let's take a look at raise folding instead. Now you said that um, the raise folding stuff. You say you don't think he exploited me here. Obviously, you're not going to know if somebody's exploiting you in one particular situation. I mean, we're looking at this hand in a vacuum of just this hand. I don't know if you have history against this guy, and that's really the only way that you're going to be able to know if somebody's exploiting you is if you have history. So you said zero history. Okay. So if you have zero history and you're in a situation like this where this guy's sitting on about 11 big blinds or so, then my default play versus a reg is to raise. And I know you said, I'm not sure if he exploited me. Don't even make that assumption right now. Obviously, he could quite simply have a good hand here. The only way you can start assuming that guys are going to be capable of exploiting you is naturally if one of two things occurs. You raise, he shoves, you call, and he flips over a really bad hand. Obviously, he was 3-betting thinking he has tons of fold equity. So that can tell you. And two, if his frequency of 3-bets goes up against you. Outside of that, do not make the assumption that guys are going to exploit you. The majority of players are not capable of exploiting you. And remember, again, I've done so many of these videos, so many of these study sessions, so many coaching sessions that I always feel kind of repetitive and like a broken record that I say, don't assume that they're going to exploit you until you know they're capable of it. Don't make that assumption. And for somebody to exploit you, it's not just one time. They have to do it really wide. We're talking about 3-betting. Do it really wide and really often. Okay? So you're not a regular in the $35 games. Fine. He has no history against you. You have no history against him. And again, when a guy's sitting with that type of stack, they don't assume typically too much fold equity, such that their 3-betting ranges aren't going to be too drastic from their all-in calling range. And again, that's my initial assumption. I'll change that assumption once I start getting some more information. For right now, this guy's going to be to your left. Okay? He's going to be in your blind. Let's see what he does the next time. If he 3-bets you again, all right. Then maybe we could start paying more attention to that, maybe mixing in a shove, or what's even better is you raise and are capable of calling with the appropriate range as well. So you have a couple ways of handling, and a common theme that I'll be discussing through these hands, because they're kind of similar, is that understand your table image, understand what you're portraying at that specific table, and understand how to use that against your opponents. Okay, you raise folded here. Okay, we don't know if the guy is exploiting us or not. So let's try the next time. I'm going to do the same exact thing. If he 3-bets again, okay, maybe next time I'll look to mix in a shove. Or if I pick up a good hand, naturally I'll raise and see what happens again. If you raise again and he folds, okay, I will then probably raise again and see what happens. You can mix in a fold. Just understand how to mix up your play. I mean, the point of the whole raise fold, raise call concept was the idea of getting out of the straightforward unexploitable style. But you can adapt even further from that. So what I want to do here, with that public service announcement, what I want to do is just bring up a Cardrunners EV calculation that, don't assume we have to shove or fold. The question was, is folding better? Let's take a look at what raise folding looks like. Non-regs or tighter stealers. Oh, gotcha. I see what you're saying. So, so I just set up the situation here in Cardrunners EV. We're raising to 360 with Queen 4 off. We gave this guy, actually it should be wider. It should be around 30%, which I think, actually I don't think it was, I'll do it similar. Something like this. Yeah, let's just do that. It's close to 30%. A couple different hands in there, but it's more the frequency, and we're folding anyway. So let's just do a quick calculation where we're just going to raise fold versus that same, if his 3-betting range is the same as his all-in calling range, which again is something that I'm assuming until I know otherwise when players have this type of stack size. So let's just do the calculation. And you can see that raise folding instead results in 72 chips plus, plus EV calculation of 72 chips versus 9. Okay? Now the question is, how wide does he have to start 3-betting you? Let's just put in a bunch of hands. I mean, you can put in whatever. It doesn't matter. Let's just go there. Let's add those hands in. 37 chips. So you can see, I mean, this is the question you have to ask yourself. With that stack size, is this guy going to be 3-betting significantly wider than his all-in calling range when he has 10, 11 big blinds? More often than not, that's not going to be the case. Well, folding pre is going to be negative. You're going to be losing, well, yeah, 0, negative, however you want to look at it. You're going to be losing chips. You're giving up your small blind. So, obviously, if any of these were negative, you're not going to get jammed that wide if he doesn't know you. Right. So, I mean, I kept going wider. I went from 30% to 40%. You can see this is still better than shoving, which is all better than folding. Yeah, Edward, zero is the correct answer. Okay, so therefore, so there you go. So he has to be 3-betting you 44% of the time for you to just fold, essentially. All right, so does that make sense in that question? And I think it's important that we keep going through these in different study sessions and in videos because it's still a hard concept to grasp. People still aren't comfortable with it, and it can be extremely profitable, more profitable than obviously shoving. Um, right, it's ridiculous. So for him to truly exploit you, so looking at 30,000 foot view, for somebody to truly exploit you in this spot when you raise, they need to 3-bet you over 40%. And then they have to keep doing that against you as well. Okay, let's say we knew for a fact he was exploiting you in this hand. Okay, is he going to do it the next time and the next time and the next time? If he isn't, then just keep doing it, obviously. But then you need to be self-aware enough that if he does start 3-betting you a little bit more, then okay, start mixing up your game. Use that to your advantage. Stay one step ahead. Maybe widen your calling range if he's going to 3-bet, or shove all in. Obviously, you want to mix it up. It's a matter of playing optimally to where you are correctly adding in unexploitable versus exploitable plays. We're just looking at it. I mean, I guess you could say, uh, yeah. So the equity when you fold, because those chips are already in the pot. Those chips are already there. They're no longer yours. So you see here that it says equity when you fold, you have 2,625 chips, which is what you're left with. So anything less than 0 here um, is a more negative situation compared to just folding because you have to assume the 75 chips are gone. They're not yours anymore. They're the pot's. So we wouldn't say, well, this is negative 0.65. That's better than negative 75. No, you can't do that because, again, those 75 chips aren't yours anymore. All right. So everybody cool in that situation? Everybody agree with raise folding instead of shoving and even instead of just folding? All right. Yeah, so, Lucas, as you said, um, that needs to become the standard. For a long time, the standard was, oh, you're effectively 10, 11, 12 big blinds, I'm shoving or folding. That was the automatic play. Well, that's, we want to hardwire our brains to be, okay, I'm versus a reg, I have 10, 11 effective big blinds. My standard play needs to be raise, fold, raise, call, and then adjust from there. Um, what's the raise call range versus a reg without history? I mean, that's definitely a good question. Obviously, you're never going to know exactly what his three betting range is. I mean, what we can do is we can show an example here to see. Um, so let's do this. That's a good question. So random, we'll give random hands. We'll give our opponent, we'll get him back to that 30%. So let's just say, on average, 30%. I think it's a half decent range for solid regs here. I can't see. Let's just say it's something like that, 28%. Um, and I don't care what hands we put in here right now, and I'll show you why. I just have to put something in here for the calculation. And we can do the maximum exploitive play for the small blind. All right. So we're going to raise with any two cards. He's going to three bet with approximately, well, we got 28% in there. We can call with, can you guys see this okay? Maybe I can, hold on. There you go. So you can see the EV values that it calculated. Now, would I call with 7-6 suited? Of course not. Look at the EV number there, 3.65. 9-7 suited is 3.48. And this is just through simulations, 100,000 or 10,000 simulations. These are the numbers that came out. Would I call with those hands? Of course not. Because we're also, I would want to have a little bit of a cushion. We're never going to really know 100% what our opponent's three betting range is. We're assuming this guy is on a 28.8% three betting range. What if it's a little bit tighter than that? Then those 7-6 suited hands become negative plays. So I would just eliminate all those. I would probably start including the King 10 off, the Jack 10 suited looks like a pretty good call. Obviously any pocket pair, any ace. Start including probably like King 8 suited. Hands like that, typically calling with like a small blind there to give yourself enough of a cushion. See what other hands are in there. So when you are looking at it, don't think all of a sudden, I got a raise call with 7-6 suited. No. In a perfect world, if you knew someone's exact range, maybe that could be a plus EV play, but obviously we're never in that situation, and 3 chips is not enough to justify risking 11, 12 big blinds in your stack. Yeah, I think in these spots, a small blind is a pretty good range. This is a question that's always been brought up. I don't think there's ever been a really clear answer. It's pretty subjective. The big blind 75. Well, what if a play is plus EV by 65 chips? I still think that's fine. I think that'll be okay. If but I just don't want to get into like the 10. Like in this spot, if I never knew about the whole raise fold concept and was only shove or fold, I would probably assume this is more of a fold in this spot. The 9, 10 chips, anything at the bottom of that range where it's just really borderline, you can eliminate because that's based upon exact ranges, which you're never really going to know. All right. All right, good stuff. So let's move on to the next hand. All right, I'll pull it up and then we'll go back to it. Okay. So it looks like another chip EV spot. Um, we've got deuce 3 offsuit, small blind. We have a little bit more than 10 big blinds. What do we got? About 9 big blinds, 8 big blinds in the big blind. The question is, what do we do with deuce 3? Deuce 3 offsuit. All right, so let me go back to the question now. Now that we see the hand, deuce 3 was a min raise and obviously a raise fold. Big blind was probably his reg. His stats were 12, 11 after 50 hands. According to the videos, I did the raise expecting only to get a fold or a shove. Good. No way exploiting me here. No history. First time versus him. Looks crazy. Yes, it does. It does look crazy. I folded his hands was $30, 45 man. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, regardless of even what buy-in it is, what you have in front of you is a guy playing 12-11 over 50 hands. That's still pretty. I mean, it's obviously not 1,000 hands, but it's significant enough, in my opinion. And again, if you want to look up to see if somebody's a reg, obviously the stats help. I would just pull him up on SharkScope real quick. I always do that. If I'm unsure about a guy, maybe I haven't seen him before, but he's got reggy stats, I'll pull him up. And if he's got any sort of winning record, then you obviously know that he has a clue of what's going on. He's not going to flat you, and you can make those proper assumptions to make this exploitable play. So the question is, does everybody agree with this play here? Raise the 300 versus a stack, and he shoves over top, and we have to raise fold. Kind of similar to the last hand, obviously a little bit less effective stack. Questions? Agree? Disagree? Standard? Yeah, again, I mean, I always like to raise a little bit bigger in the small blind. Where I don't mind it as much in this scenario is just because the stack sizes are shorter overall. So I'm not sure if it's going to have too much of an effect given the stack sizes. But like I said, yeah, I'd like going a little bit bigger in general. But either way, um, but yeah, I mean this is a very Like again, I'm going to call this a standard play, even though it was mentioned in the post. This seems crazy. We need to again hardwire our brains to not see this as crazy, but to see this as extremely profitable in plus EV versus a reg. Okay. Again, I mean I'll pull it up real quick. I won't go through as in-depth because I mean it's a similar concept here. So we raise. I mean, what range do we want to give him for 3-betting here? Let me ask you guys that question. So we have a 12-11 guy we don't have any history against. What would you assume? You have to assume a 3-betting range at some point. So what do you want to give him? Figure what? 8 big blinds. You don't have to trust me. Just trust the calculation. I just put it in there. The concept is there. The math proves it. You know. I mean that's why we use these programs to prove or disprove. Yeah, I mean a reg should assume 0 fold equity. So throw out some ranges, just so you don't again you don't have to trust me here. Let's see what your guys' ranges are. What do you give him as a 3-betting range in this spot? A 12-11 reg with no fold equity. And if you don't know, Put yourself in their spot. Not saying everybody here is 12-11, but your regs, a guy raises into you, you have 8 big blinds. What are you 3-betting? And I'm assuming any 3-betting range is going to be pretty a value range because a reg will assume 0 fold equity, Eduardo, as you just said. Around 20%. Fives plus, ace 8, ace 7 suited. What did I just do? So here's around 20%. Do you guys want to go tighter or looser than this? Tighter? Alrighty, so take out these, take out those, maybe take out those, something like this. Ace 8 off, ace 5 suited, king jack suited, king queen off, pocket pairs. Well, they don't know where we might be on any two shoving range. But again, raising is a whole different ball game. First of all, if you have no history, a raise here will really screw people up. They're like, "What the hell are you doing raising?" They assume you probably have aces, so they might assume you're on a premium hand and fold and be really tight. I don't want to make that assumption here because obviously that plays in our favor. Okay. So let's do this. So we raised with 3 deuce offsuit. We gave him 15.5% range based upon was it ace 5 suited, ace 8 off, king jack suited, pocket pairs, and we're going to raise fold. So let's take a look. And so this play results in 151 chips. That's pretty damn good. That's one big blind you'll pick up there. That's significant. That's very significant. Okay. So that's why I said the concept is there. The math proves it. Um, I don't think 15% is out of the question for a 12-11 guy with no fold equity. He should be on a value range that he's happy to show down. But if you want to go wider, let's see what wider looks like. Let's just go wider. I have no idea if this is going to be plus EV, minus EV. There you go. So we put him at 20, what do we put him at? 24%? 111 chips. It's still massive. Essentially, that's a spot you can't pass up. So again, if you find yourself in the spot, which so many people do, and they look at 3 deuce off, um, obviously the initial reaction is to fold. But again, we need to hardwire our brains to say no. Any hand here is a standard open. So, you wanted 20% at least. I put it to 24, and it's 111 chips. So let's just start. Let's go until we get to. Let's go suited connectors. I have to imagine it's going to be pretty close. So now 35%. 62 chips. So we're close to a small blind. Still plus EV. I mean, obviously we can keep going. Close to 40%. Oops. 35. So you can see we're probably going to get to like 50%. 35 chips. But I think you guys get the point here. How many guys are doing that? How many people are doing that? Yep, 75 150. I want to make sure I didn't add any chips to the pot. 75 150. It's a very plus EV play. And look, and I do want to point something out about this hand, though. Okay? We just proved that this is extremely profitable, right? But also understand what just happened. And I think this is probably something that I could have elaborated on better in my video, is that yes, we know that this is plus EV, but what also just happened? We just showed this guy, who again, we now have no history against, but maybe we develop history. Maybe he's a new reg, whatever. And this is a guy we're going to play against every single day. What did we just show him? We just showed him that we are capable of raise folding with, what, 10 big blinds or 8 big blinds effective? So I'll just have that in the back of your mind. You know, and try to take note of if he takes note of that, and how would you know if he figures that out? If if his frequency of 3-betting increases against you. Now look, I've played against tons of players, and I've been doing this play for a while, and I've raise folded versus regs that I see every single day for 9 big blinds, and they've never changed. Okay, I still do it. So there are some that just don't change, and that could be because, hey, maybe they're playing 16 tables, 20 tables, they're just not paying attention. Or they're just not capable of adapting. Because adapting is, for somebody to exploit you, again, it requires 3-betting really wide. I know I said that, but it feels awkward to a lot of people to 3-bet really wide in this spot. You know, again, put yourself in that spot. How comfortable would you feel? Because technically, if you're raising any 2 cards but only calling with, you know, whatever range, a 20 to 30% range, he can 3-bet with any 2 cards. How comfortable do you feel 3-betting with any 2 cards? Usually the answer is not too comfortable. So, do you suggest raising even the 350 to show this guy that he has even less fold equity? Like I said, normally I do. Given that he has 8 big blinds effective, I'm not sure if going any bigger will accomplish that. I mean, if I'm sitting there with 8 big blinds and the guy goes to 300 or 330, I already know I'm not flatting, but I don't think I have any fold equity anyway. If we both had like 12 big blinds, 11 big blinds, yeah, I probably would go a little bit bigger, like the 350. So any questions on that? And again, I think a takeaway is just understand your table image as well, and understand how to use your table image against opponents if you've shown you can do what others might think is something weird, like raise fold to an 8 big blind stack. Obviously, it looks fishy, but I thought I put myself on Do Not Disturb. Hold on. Whoops. All right. All right. So on to the next hand. All right. So this is. Let me just pull it up first. Remember, it was a 45 man. We were approaching the final table. So there is a little bit of a bubble factor. So we'll factor that in. Okay. All right, so I'll play the hand, then I'll go back to the question. So again, 45 man, we're approaching the final table. So if there's, what, 7 people at this table, there might be 7 or 8 at the other table. So let's just say like there's 15 players left. Let me just skip ahead. So we get a raise from the cutoff. And you flat and check fold. Fine. So the question was, okay, so this looks like a 3-bet spot versus an aggro stealer. So I'll assume for right now that it's an aggro reg, because an aggro fishy player I probably wouldn't do much against anyway, because I don't necessarily want to 3-bet because they're able to call really wide and do all sorts of crazy stuff. So, okay, so he's a reg. So we know if we 3-bet if we 3-bet shove, he shouldn't have a ridiculous wide calling range like a fishy player might. And if we 3-bet small, he shouldn't be flatting a 3-bet either, especially given his stack size. Okay, so it's an aggro reg. Calling was stupid, didn't want to fold, but no balls for the 3-bet. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how 3-betting really wide to exploit players feels really awkward. So just understand that. Everybody feels that way. How does the bubble factor affect my range? And how are the numbers in general? It must be his 4-bet range, assuming he steals 35%. Okay, so a couple questions in there. Um, when you're being the aggressor against another opponent, now yes, he opened up here, but our question is, what should we 3-bet? So really, we're going to be the aggressor. In that case, the bubble factor should play more of a role for the opponent. Okay? Because now he has to make a decision. If he's a reg, he understands, whether he understands bubble factors or not, he understands ICM, he understands he's approaching the final table. So he may feel he might need to tighten up. Which also is why I say, and kind of going on a little bit of a tangent here, when you're in high ICM scenarios, which isn't necessarily this one, but let's say you're on the bubble of a 45-man, a bubble of an 18-man, high ICM scenarios, playing exploitable in terms of being the one opening up through other regs, that can be a tough proposition if other regs are capable of exploiting you. And I just talked about how most are not capable of exploiting players. Most are not capable of exploiting players, but they know how to exploit scenarios. Like if I'm the chip leader and you're second in chips and there's a short stack and you decide to raise into me, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to 3-bet with any 2 cards because I know you can't call without aces or kings in a high ICM scenario. So that's not me exploiting you. That's me exploiting the ICM of the situation. That's the question you need to ask in terms of how does the bubble factor affect things? How does ICM affect things? It really does affect things in terms of who the aggressor is. And what position they're forcing you in, or what position you're forcing them in. So here, if you 3-bet him, you would be putting him in a tough spot. So that's how I use high ICM scenarios to my advantage, essentially. But also know when I can be the one being exploited. So you might want to play more unexploitable versus regs who understand ICM and are capable of maybe 3-betting wide and 3-betting with any 2 cards for that matter. So what do you guys think about this hand? It's not just a straight push-fold type of scenario. I mean, I'll reset it. So we assume this guy's a reg. He's got an okay stack. What's your play here with ace-deuce suited? Are you 3-betting? Are you folding? Are you calling? What are you guys doing? So Eduardo, you bring up a good point here. So you always look at who he's raising through. Okay, if you're in his position, who are you raising through? Well, he's raising through a guy that's got what, 7 big blinds. So when players raise through other shorter stacks, who they may feel they need to call down, if they shove, then they're probably going to open hands they're comfortable with calling with. So that might tighten players up once in a while. I don't know if he assumes that, but yeah, let's assume right now we're not calling pre-flop. I don't like. I think this is where ICM, where we can consider ICM, where this reverse implied odds potentially putting ourselves in a pretty bad spot post flop. So I wouldn't get involved here, calling and playing post flop. Okay, I like raising to 1400. 3-bet small should be 2 times max. So I think 1600 might be even a little bit too big. If you 3-bet to say, like Lucas said, like 1400, is 1600 going to accomplish any more than 1400? Is he going to flat for another 800 with his stack if he's a reg? Again, my assumption is no, most won't. Will 1 out of every 50 players flat all of a sudden short and catch you by surprise? Yeah, it happens. It kind of sucks when it happens. But if that's the odds, I'm not going to factor that into my decision making again unless I know. It doesn't have to be 2.5 times. You look at it in relation to stack sizes. Sometimes a min 3-bet is perfect. Sometimes going a little bit more might be better. You know, if he had 5,000 stack, maybe going to 1,500. You know, just to make sure he doesn't flat, or you know, maybe give him less room to four bet potentially. So let's take a quick vote. Let's take a quick vote. Who is folding? So you have several options. Who's folding pre? Who's three bet jamming? Who's three betting small? And if you're three betting small, to what amount? And again, you know, we're making the assumption here that the player is opening 35%, because that's what was posted in the forum. Now, we can debate that whether or not, but you have to make an assumption while you're playing. If you know he's aggro, I mean, this is why in my HUD, I like to have the cutoff raise first number. That can be helpful. Maybe we might need to tighten him up because he's raising through a shorter stack. So maybe he's only raising hands he's comfortable with showing down. That is definitely a factor. So Lucas is three betting. So we got three bet all in, three betting the 1400, folding to a four bet. Three bet 1500, shove, fold, call. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at it. I would say if you do know that a reg is opening over 30% from the cutoff, let's say, three betting is usually going to be really profitable. Sometimes even any two cards, because yes, a reg might be opening wide, but very rarely will they commit their chips really wide, with a really wide range, unless they have a reason to. But again, that's an assumption that I make that they're not going to. So let me think I. Yep. So what did I do first? Okay. So what I did first was I evaluated a three bet jam. So I put him on for right now like a 35% range. Make it whatever you want. I just did Broadway, some suited connectors. You might be able to take these out. Like a 35% range. We three bet with ace deuce suited. Of that range, what do you think he's going to call with? What's he going to call an all in with? Is he going to call wider than this? Do you want to add in those? Does he have a reason to call wider? I mean, because obviously he has to put you on a range as well. Not to start. He's got more than 12 big blinds to start. Perhaps a shove does. It doesn't look like aces, for example. So what do you want to make his calling range? Uh, Maybe they call wider. Um, us just do this and let's see what it looks like. I'd be interested to see if he would call ace nine suited. I feel like he would have to know you, and that you can three bet really wide. Then he could sure call ace nine suited. Um, let's just take a look at what this looks like. Crap. Cardrunners EV has stopped responding. That's wonderful. It should kick in a second. All right, so here we go. Yeah, I'm using my same old PC. I got about 3 different computers, and they all tend to crap out on me once in a while. Um, all right, so let me mention one thing that I did real quick. What's a nice thing about Cardrunners EV is I can actually, even though we're 2 tables, I can turn this into an ICM scenario because ICM does play a role. You know, you're approaching the final table of a 45 man. Um, so I did put in, essentially what I did was, I put in the stacks that I knew, and then I knew how many remaining chips there would be, and divided that among the remaining 8 players. So on average, that's what's left. And then put the prize structure in, and that should accomplish getting the ICM here of the scenario. Um, 16 left. All right, I put 15 left. All right, it's not going to change too much. But here you can see a 3-bet shove is 0.56. So a 3-bet is going to be appropriate with this tight of a calling range. Now, if we go a little bit wider, I think it was mentioned to go a little bit wider. Let's see what that looks like. I was doing this calculation earlier, and for some reason, it doesn't like... Everything else was really quick, and I guess it just doesn't like this calculation. Bum, bum, bum. So is everybody while we wait for this, is everybody 3-betting in general here? Or do some people think we should just fold? Come on. So it drops down to 0.46, but still quite profitable. Well, yeah, I mean, a 3-bet small here is going to be more plus EV. Of course, if we assume that he's not going to be 4-betting any wider than he would call an all-in. Again, that's the assumption I would make until I know otherwise. Okay, I mean, and we can do that if you guys want to see it. That's what a shove looks like. At 0.46 to zero point 0.7 or something like. What did I do? I would say I like going to 1400. You can even do a min 3-bet. That'd be fine. Um, right. So zero history again. So I mean, do you guys want me to just put the same 4-betting range? Let's go. I can use this. Something like that. He would 4-bet with that range. Fold, and then we fold. So he raises, we 3-bet to 1400 with ace deuce suited. He 4-bets with a very similar range from before, and otherwise he folds, and then we fold. I I agree with you, but again, think about what that means. If we say his 4-betting range is even tighter than his all-in calling range, then that's going to make 3-betting massively more profitable. So that will just prove our point even more. It's better to do it when it's equal, because if it's any tighter, then of course it's better. And of course we'll probably have to wait about 20 minutes for this damn thing to calculate, but just bear with me. So yeah, if you're doing these calculations on your own, you know, yes, we can assume that when we 3-bet small or min raise when you shouldn't, people might be able to put you on, or people might assume you're on a premium range, because that's usually what people do with, when they min raise with 10 big blinds, or they 3-bet small, that they have aces, kings, and accordingly they get tighter. Um, Use that in the back of your mind to your own advantage, but I wouldn't use that in the calculations, because it's just it might lead you astray a bit for future calculations because once you do it, if you do it once, then you do it again, they're probably not going to put you on aces every single time. What the hell? There we go. So about 0.2% more. Three betting small is better, assuming that wider three betting range. Sorry, four betting range. And of course, any tighter is going to make that number better. And also think about what that means. Look, if you have to three bet fold, you're still in the game. I think it's another aspect of this. Disregarding the actual numbers, obviously we know that it's more plus EV, but you're still in the game as well. If you three bet jam with ace deuce, the reason I think a lot of people aren't too excited about three bet jamming with ace deuce, even though they know it's profitable, is because whenever he flips over a hand, you're absolutely crushed. He's either got a better ace or a pocket pair. Obviously, it's very the best you could ever hope for is king queen. Yeah, 0.63% of the prize pool. Yep. So that's why I like three betting smaller against regs in general. Because it also allows me to do it with a wider range of hands and not psych myself out. Because if we all played like robots, we'd be able to forget about what it looks like or what it feels like when we three bet jam three deuce offsuit because we assume a ton of fold equity. But obviously that isn't the case. Yeah, so it's big, you know. So does everybody agree with that? Does everybody like that play? That the three bet small instead of the three bet jam, obviously better than a shoving was about 0.42, I believe, versus that same range. So still profitable because you should have tons of fold equity. So if you shoved, can't fault you, would have been profitable. Obviously, what we're always after is the most profitable. And the most profitable many times, just like it's more profitable to raise fold or raise call, like the hands we were going through before when we're opening. The same goes for three betting. Take it one step further. It's better to three bet small if we're not going to assume a wider than normal four betting range instead of three bet shoving. Alrighty. All right. See some comments coming in, so I'll wait to move on. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other way, it's not that it's not profitable. It obviously is, but it's a little bit more high variance as well. Yeah, tons of value. I mean, that's why I'm saying like I know it was mentioned in here. Where was it? I feel this was good, although it looks crazy, and that was back to the what was that the three deuce off hand? Yes, all of this looks crazy. It looks crazy to three bet small into a 14 big blind stack. It looks crazy to min raise into an 8 big blind stack. You have to get out of the it looks crazy aspect, and you might look like a fish, and you might get berated by other regs who are saying, "What the hell are you doing? Min raise folding to 8 big blinds." What you need to have in the back of your mind again, hardwire into your brain that this needs to become your new standard, your new automatic play. It's why I tell so many people to drop tables initially to nail this stuff down. But then once you nail it down and you believe in it and you know when to do it, you can then add the tables back in because this needs to become automatic. Um, so let's jump into the next hand. It's 180 man. Um, I think if I recall, this was a hand where you're raising through two aggressive players. Yep. Okay. So it's a 180 man. I think there's about 13 left. So we're approaching the final table. Very small bubble factor here. I think when I did the calculation, I kept it chip EV. It's probably like a 1.2 type of bubble factor. So some ICM's involved, but I could then argue the other side that you're playing for first, second, or third anyway. So let's just deal with chip EV for right now. Um, all right, so let's go through this scenario first, and then I'll go back to the forum. So queen three suited, min raise from the button. Um, everybody's above 10 big blinds. Small blind jams, you fold. So question is, again, yeah, the raise fold. Not too happy about it, although it might be profitable. Blinds were aggressive. Small blind was an aggro loose fish. Okay. Big blind was a top reg. Both at least 25% 3-bet, in your opinion. Risk 2,400. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So one thing in here that makes any calculation difficult is the fact that this small blind doesn't just have to 3-bet you. He might do all sorts of other crap, obviously, like flatting. So flatting, we're obviously not going to include that in our calculations. It's not the worst thing in the world, though, if he wants to flat and you're in the big blind, even though you have an awful hand, because obviously you can win it post-flop with a C-bet. So in general, it's going to be a value play to be opening here and having somebody call you playing out of position. So I don't necessarily mind that too much, assuming that there's some, he's flatting a little bit there. Let me scroll down. But then the question is, what if both of them are aggressive? What if both are 3-betting 20, 25%? So about 50% combined. Yeah, I agree that you might be approaching the point to where opening may not be best if they're really aggressive. But let's take a look. Here we go. Okay, so what I did was here, I took out the option of the small blind flatting. Let's just say that maybe they're two regs who are ultra aggressive. Um, this isn't even necessarily ultra aggressive for blind versus blinds, or sorry, steal re-steal spots. So I just put ace five off, ace deuce suited, any pocket pair, any Broadway. That's about 25%. Same for the big blind. You know, we can argue all day whether he might be wider. Sure, he might be. But let's just take a look at what a raise fold looks like, assuming 600, 1200 with 875 extra chips added in with the antes. So it's about 440 chips you're going to pick up. So it's actually less than a small blind. Is that still profitable to open? Probably. I mean, obviously it's profitable, but again, it's less than a small blind. Um, if you think they could actually be wider, then obviously, I mean, we can take a look at, you know, let's say he goes any ace and some other suited hands, you know, something like this. So ICM, with a little bit of ICM in there, you're probably a little bit tighter. You can see you're getting pretty close to break even if he's a little bit wider. So usually what I say is um, when antes are involved, and obviously the more antes the better. Um, if someone, usually that break even point for opening is around that 45 to 50% range. Um, and obviously that's kind of what we're in here. And lost my train of thought for a second. Bop, bop, bop. Yeah, there's a little bit of ICM, so yeah, you can be a little bit tighter. Um, and if you were in this situation, and there was some option of the small blind flatting you, then if you, I think you mentioned in your post that if you had a hand like pocket fives, pocket eights, let's just put it this way. If you had a hand like a value hand like that, like a king jack or pocket fives, and you had a loose, aggressive, fishy player in a situation like that to your left, then those types of hands I would just jam. because you don't necessarily want to be in a situation with pocket fives where you're getting flatted playing post flop, in my opinion. I think you want to make what you know is to be the plus EV play. Um, a king jack, you could just jam it. It's probably pretty close to raise calling and jamming with those types of hands. But once you add in the factor of an unknown player, a random, a fish, whatever you want to call them, and they're aggressive, I would more lean towards a solid plus EV play because you want to make plays that you know are plus EV. When you're dealing with a random play, it's hard to exploit the unknown. We can do all this raise fold, raise call stuff versus regs because we can make certain assumptions that are pretty accurate. It's hard to make an accurate assumption about somebody who's just clicking buttons. So yeah, I agree with this. And again, I don't mind the open. And here's what I would say. Get a feel for how the players are playing. See what you can get away with. Because for the time being, you're going to be in this situation for a couple of orbits, most likely. So are these guys going to be 3-betting you nonstop? Is this guy going to flat? I'm not sure if this is the first time you faced him at this table, whatever. If it is, I would go for it. I would make the raise. And then adapt based upon how they're playing. Because you want to figure out really soon, or really early, how someone's going to play against you if they're to your direct left and you're in a situation where you're going to be playing against them often. Like, let's say you're three-handed. Obviously, let's say you're at the final table, and it's small blind versus big blind. See how they're going to play against you. Are they going to let you get away with min raises all day? Are they going to 3-bet you a ton? And use that information to set yourself up for a future play. Yeah, so, what can we assume about a good reg who's got more chips than you as you're approaching the final table? He could exploit the situation here and 3-bet you really, really wide. So those are all things to keep in mind. And if he is capable of doing that, exploiting essentially like the final table bubble, then yeah, you might want to just fold this hand. So what I would say is test the waters, see what you can get away with. If they let you get away with it, then that will give you the confidence to keep doing it in the future. If they don't let you get away with it, maybe try it one more time. Otherwise, you might have to, play it more straight up. No, I could care less about the hand. I'm essentially seeing what I could. Yeah, you have to fold a 3-bet anyway. Um, I want to see how players are going to play against me. Because if you don't test the waters first, then you instantly fall back into the straightforward, unexploitable mode, and you don't even know whether you can make more profitable plays. So that's why I say you got to test the waters first to see what you're capable of doing. Because if you do that and you realize, hey, these guys aren't playing back at me, you might be able to make 3 or 4 more extra plus EV plays before you even hit the final table. Yeah. Was it a 3-bet anyway? Yeah. Because we're going to be race folding. The ace is a little bit of a blocker there, for sure, so it would affect numbers a little bit. Um, you can't stand heat. Um, yeah, we're going to be race folding anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We're basing the assumption off of fold equity. So maybe after this we can go through it. I can show you um, what raising with any two cards looks like, and then what your calling range would be. um, all right. So any questions about that? Everybody, what do you guys think about this? I say, the calculations say, look, it's pretty marginal based upon aggressive opponents. I would say, in general, kind of taking a step back and forgetting necessarily about the situation, but just how to play in these types of spots in general. Test the water, see what you can get away with first, and then go from there. And you want to do that throughout the game. Especially if you're in a situation where the same guy's going to be to your left for a while. Like I say, 3-handed, 4-handed, final tables, a 9-man game, which is, again, like a final table. You're going to have the same player to your left the entire time. You want to figure out really quickly how they're going to play against you. And I think this was a situation, you're against another big reg again. For some reason, this didn't come out. It's weird. I think I've done this in the replayer, and it just doesn't show the blinds. So this is another situation here where you said you're against another reg, you know, the top reg. You've got more chips than him. What were the blinds? 3K, 6K. Again, my standard play is to raise and obviously raise fold. I remember your question was, well, this guy's a really top reg. We could raise fold, invest money at big blinds, worst work 42%. This guy's not an average Joe. It can be exploited easily. Maybe not. He might not be. He might 3-bet you a ton here. It just goes back to what I was saying before. Test the waters, see what's going on, and if he is capable of 3-betting you really wide, then revert, start mixing in. Raise sometimes, shove sometimes, maybe fold once in a while. Just understand what it looks like and adapt and keep people on their toes. Like, for example, if I'm at a table and I raise and the guy folds, and I raise again and the guy folds, obviously I'm feeling good about it, but I also want to make it look legit. I don't want to raise 8 times in a row and maybe screw up my image for later. I mean, not necessarily screw up your image, but I want to give him one to kind of make it look legit, to give myself more confidence that I can keep doing it. So I might go 3 times and then I'll give him one. Or maybe 2 times I'll give him one, then do it 2 or 3 more times. Something like that. So it's all about just mixing up. There's no exact science to that. It's just understanding table image. And here, again, maybe folding's appropriate. Maybe shoving would have been better. I mean, he might understand what your range is if you have a good history against him. But again, my default play is not to shove or fold. It's versus a reg. He's got 11 big blinds or so. Is to raise versus him. Raise, fold, and then adjust from there. So any questions on that? We have 2 more hands to go through. If you guys want to go through them, I think there were 180 man games. These were a combo of 180 and 45 man, I believe. So why don't we go through these spots? Okay. Why is this popping up? There we go. All right. So Eduardo, thanks for sending these over to me. I didn't really have a chance to look at them. I mean, I took a brief look at them. If you want to copy and paste what you sent over to me, you can do that and put it in here so we can all kind of take a look at thoughts. But here, taking a look at it, we got Ace-7 offsuit through a full table, post ante. Let's first look at the stack sizes. Everybody has 10 big blinds or more, so that's a good thing. Let's take a look at the players. Beer Man, I think he's a reg, right? I'm almost positive. You don't have a ton of hands on him, but I thought he was a reg, or maybe I just seen him before. 17-13, 14-12. We got a 51-14 guy. That looks like a lot of fun. 16-13. I'm not sure why that says 8-9. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. 12-11, 13-11, 13-11. So really tight table, -1 guy. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this spot? I think the question is, should we open? Open equals 2 loose. I mean, we can do a calculation on this. It's tough because obviously you have a guy here that can flat you, force you to play in out of position. I'm not totally opposed to doing that either. He's going to call with so many crap hands that I actually don't mind doing that. I'm never really going to lose a whole lot. If you had 2 guys like that, I definitely wouldn't open. 1 guy in a tight table, it's debatable. I don't mind a fold. Um, I mean, I can't argue with a fold here. Let's ask this question. What if there wasn't that loose guy? Would you guys open here without that 51-14 guy? I don't know what his fold to C bet is. What's his fold to C bet? Do we have it? And you know what? It doesn't even matter. We're not going to have enough hands to justify it, unless there was like 10 straight hands where he played. Yeah, if this is based off of mine, what says this 33 is fold to C bet. That might just be, I guess, maybe 1 out of 3. He might not be folding a ton. So I mean, him there, it definitely makes it a little bit more iffy. Um, if he wasn't here, this would definitely be an open. Um, I mean, I could go through the calculation. It would take about like 5-10 minutes to put every hand, every situation in with Cardrunners EV, and then it might take a few minutes to calculate. So I think I'll spare everybody the time. Take a look at the other videos I've done. I've done these calculations before where versus a reggie table, it's only three better fold. You're opening under the gun. You're obviously representing strength. So I mean, how wide is their three betting range really going to be? And in that case, with post ante, this is actually going to be a plus EV open. Dealing with an unknown guy, it's hard to get that actual calculation. Usually, I don't mind one loose player, especially if I'm opening up from under the gun and representing strength. Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of subjective. Two guys, I'm folding. One guy, I mean, he's really on the loose side, but yeah, I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't fault you. I mean, I wouldn't open any two cards by any means, but a hand that has some showdown value that can do okay, just having an ace might be able to do okay enough for you. So I don't really mind it opening here, but eh, kind of back and forth. I could argue either way. But let's just say I'm not saying it's an instant fold either, because like I said, versus one loose player, I don't mind raising through, especially when you're representing strength from under the gun through a full table. I really don't mind playing post flop against those guys anyway. I usually see it more as a valuable situation. Obviously, I'd rather be in position, but still, I'd be opening up broadways here. Yeah, I'd probably still fold like ace deuce. Um, maybe like ace five type hands I'd open. Like ace five suited, ace seven, ace eight off, something like that. Let's go. I'm not going to say it's a mandatory open because the loose guy there kind of throws a little bit of a wrench into things. Again, you're dealing with an unknown scenario a little bit. Um, you don't know how much of a headache he's going to cause. If this was a nittier table, not that it has to be necessarily a mandatory open, I'd be opening. I think it's one of those plays that you add in, and it all adds up. It's going to be a plus EV open versus a reggie table like this, for sure. What the hell? Okay. Here's the second hand. This is an interesting spot. Queen eight suited. Like nine, a little bit more than nine big blinds. 180 man. So what is the question here again? Was it? I think you said you saw in a Pokerstrategy video that you should raise here instead of shoving, even though shoving is plus EV. Min raise my entire range, even less than heavy blinds. Difficult to pot odds calculation, do some misclicks by regs. I would like to know. So for you 180 man guys, what do you guys typically doing with Queen 8 suited here? Yeah, I was gonna say a shove is might be a little bit wide. Queen 10 suited. But let's okay. So let's go back to the question. Though. So let's just say whatever hand we have. Let's say it's Queen 10 suited, King Jack suited, whatever. Um, so the question is, should you min raise your entire range, even with less than 10 big blinds? So if you're gonna shove, just min raise instead. You're saying, and then you're gonna raise call. Is that is the plan to raise call? Uh, I don't know, man. Raising from there, I mean, what do you guys think a reg is going to three bet an under the gun against an under the gun raise where you're really happy to show down queen 10, queen 10. Um, queen 10, king jack. A raise fold might be better than raise call. Um, but again, that's assuming a table full. But here's the other thing that. See, I guess your thing is raise call. I'm also including raise folding. I don't like raise folding. I don't like raising with 10 big blinds to an entire table from under the gun and then folding and then leaving myself with 8 big blinds and then getting hit by the blinds. Um, but I guess your question is I'm not. So if we don't assume there's any folding. Well, 7, 6, 5 big blinds, I get it. I've done that too. It's a little bit different of a scenario with 10 big blinds because, as we've shown, there's actually room to raise fold. But 7, 6, 5 big blinds, I like doing that play because it doesn't look like a 7 or 6 big blind shove. It's more of a trick to the eye for people that are playing or multi-tabling. You say, oh, this guy just raised from under the gun through an entire table. That's what you see. I mean, I've done it plenty of times. I'm sitting there in the big blind, I see an under the gun raise, and I fold, not realizing he's sitting there with 2 big blinds behind him. So that's a totally different story. Um, if you're doing it for those, the misclicks, well, yeah, I mean, jamming, sure, but I think the point is, should you just raise instead for more trickery? It's more of a trick play rather than a calculation play. Well, Collins won a lot of money playing, so and he's a good player, so I give him a lot of credit. Yeah, but that calling range versus shove is easier to catch on. Um, no, he's crushing now. He's playing well now. I think he moved. Yeah, he was out of the states for a while. Right, right. So, um, I'm just reading through here. Calling range. Right, right. It's so easy. So I kind of get what everybody's saying now. At first, I was like, 10 big blinds. I could easily still raise fold, but I don't want to raise fold with certain hands. But yes, if you have 5, 6, 7 big blinds where you realize you're committed anyway, yes, I like to raise to as deception for people that are multi-tabling, not seeing things, because if they see a 7 big blind shove, anybody could say, well, it's a 7 big blind shove. I know he's a reg. I know what range he's on. It's easy. Once you raise, they have to think a little bit more. Just an extra second of thinking, which might be tough for somebody that's multi-tabling. They see a raise, they don't look at the stack behind. So I'm on board with that. I do that all the time. I think it's a really good play. You know, even if you have like 5 big blinds, even raising like 2.5x or something like that. Um, so yeah, that's all good. I like that play. Another little play, another little trickery type of play that I like to do, and learned this from Bob, who's in our Skype chat. He did it to me actually, and I was like, "What the hell was that play?" And one play that I like when you're really short, like if you have, um, let's say 2 big blinds, like 2.5, 3 big blinds, don't just shove all in, limp in with that. You know you have no fold equity anyway, so you limp in and hope that somebody ISO shoves on you kind of wide. So what just happened? You just got into an isolated pot with hopefully 2 live cards, rather than shove all in for 2 or 3 big blinds and maybe get 2, 3 callers for that stack. So um, when you're ultra short, limping in with like 2 or 3 big blinds is a nice little play to do as well. Two, an extra. I don't know how often that would work, but it's a little bit better than just shoving all in. Yeah, 10 big blinds. I'm not raise calling my entire range. I'm not, because like, what if I'm sitting there with like King Jack, and I raise, and I raise from under the gun, and I get a reg who 3 bets me from middle position. What hand is King Jack doing well against? You're gonna get crushed. So, but again, I don't like raise folding with 10 big blinds from under the gun, because obviously there's a higher likelihood that somebody just picks up a hand and they 3 bet you. But I then don't want to raise, fold, leave myself with 8, then get hit with the big blind. With 12 big blinds, yes, I will still min raise. Again, if there's no fish at the table, I will still min raise with that stack um, from under the gun. Typically in middle position, I might go down to like 11 big blinds, and then from late position, 10, 9 big blinds, and then from the small blind, I'll go down to 8 big blinds in terms of my raise folding potential. So yeah, I know some people that have seen the videos. They'll incorporate. You say, oh, you can raise fold with 10 big blinds, and they'll incorporate that at all positions at the table. I reserve the 8 to 10 big blind raise fold for the small blind. So I'll repeat it: 8 to 10 big blinds, like in the small blind, because you're only going through one person. Late position, 9 to 10 big blinds. Um, Once you get the middle position, I probably don't go any less than like 11, and then early position 12 in terms of my min raise. And again, that's just because you're going through more people. They can quite simply just pick up a hand against you. So those were the hands we got. Any questions on that? Agree, disagree on that? I know we talked a lot about the race fold stuff, but man, I just think it's something we all need to get hardwired into our brains, that this is the new standard way of playing when used appropriately. It's not like you have to play that way all the time. It's just that you need to get it automatic in your head and understand when and why to use it. And again, the point of playing this way so you can play optimally, incorporating the exploitable and the unexploitable when appropriate. The third hand, the 3 deuce off, same EV, then ace 2 suited. Um, let me. So the 3 bet hand you're talking about, right? On the 45 man? All right, give me 1 second here. So you just say don't have ace deuce suited, have 3 deuce offsuit. All right, it should be relatively the same. And we're going to assume the 3 bet small or 3 bet jam. Okay. All right, guys. So just bear with me for a second. What do we say? Like 1400. Uh, Raise. It probably would be plus EV, because you have so much fold equity. I'd have to take a look at that though. Come on. So what do we say? Ace Jack, Ace 10 suited. I think that was the range, right? Something like that. Or no, we included Ace 9 and Ace 10 off, right? I think that's what we had. Fold. All right, bear with me. This might take a minute or two. Can't be serious that 3 deuce off jam is better than folding. Well, we'll take a look at it when we're done here. Okay, it affected a little bit by 0.01%. It's 0.61 now. So I'll do one more thing. Just bear with me. Whoops. I have to go back to it now. So you questioned the jam. Let's see what 3 deuce off looks like versus. All right, last one, and then we'll finish up. So now I just redid it, 3 deuce off, 3-bet jam. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so obviously you can see that 3 deuce off is significantly less now in terms of a shove, but it's still profitable. So it's better than folding, let's just put it that way. It's better than folding. And that has to do with, again, if you're up against a reg, and I made the video on 3-betting to exploit, when you're up against regs who obviously aren't going to commit their entire stack with a very wide range, but they're obviously opening with a wide range, that fold equity you can 3-bet a ton. But I'd rather do it with small raises. Obviously, you see now raising small with 3 deuce off is 0.44% better than shoving. That's really significant. That's really significant. So with that, hopefully, I've talked so much about getting this stuff hardwired. Hopefully, this will help. All right, last question. The 7-4 off must work 40%, as Ian pointed out. I'll have to go back and check the 7-4 offsuit. I believe it's around 44%. I could be wrong. I think it's around 44%, 40 to 44%. So in that range, though. Yeah. It may or may not. Again, you do it, you see what you can get away with. If it doesn't work because a guy is exploiting a scenario, or maybe he's good enough to exploit you that you found that one guy, then you need to adapt. Widen your raise calling range. Play a little bit more unexploitable and higher ICM scenarios. All right, Eduardo, thanks for the hands. Yeah, and I'm going to wrap up here as well. So, good stuff, guys. Thanks for the hands, and any questions, message, leave a message in the forum there, and post your own hands, if for this type of scenario or any scenario, and then let me know, and I'll get to them. So, thanks, fellas. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. See ya.